Choosing an art style for your comic might be the most important decision you have to make, because it will shape how you bring the story to life. So no pressure then. Luckily, I have cracked the code, and it boils down to two concepts: time and enjoyment. You want to be able to get the comic done in a reasonable amount of time, and you won't make good work if you're not enjoying the process. But I don't know what style to draw in, or what colours to use, or whether I should crosshatch or just draw like Jim Lee. I hear you, and I've asked myself these questions in the past too. But don't worry, we're going to explore lots of options, and by the end of this video, you should be able to make some smart choices to make your next comic more efficient and enjoyable. We're going to start with line work. You can approach this in multiple different ways. If you enjoy drawing realistically, then start there. But if you render out every detail of every character, you're going to be there for a while, and if you're doing all the artwork yourself, you're looking at years of work. So we need to factor in the time element. We do that by taking our normal realistic style and simplifying it a little bit. Instead of rendering out every detail, pick out the elements of the characters that read the best. You know when character designers create silhouettes? They do that so they can see which characters has a design that reads really well, and then they focus down on that design. We can do the same by focusing on the key elements to make our characters and backgrounds pop and just render those, leaving out the smaller and more insignificant details. But maybe realism isn't your jam and you prefer a more cartoony style. Well, you've hit the two concepts right there, because it shouldn't take as long and you obviously enjoy it, so good for you. It's not all smooth sailing for you though, because you have a few considerations that the realistic artist could potentially avoid. But I'll address that later, because I want to talk about the elephant in the room. That's right, we're talking about manga. Considering how manga seems to be growing in popularity, I thought I'd do everyone a disservice if I didn't mention it. Manga might be the most versatile style out there because it tends to blend two into one. You have the traditional style that we all recognise, which is a more cartoony style, but manga tends to combine that with a more realistic style for the backgrounds. So if you want to go down that route, then it's not a bad idea. Even if you don't want to draw in the manga style, having a combination of styles could serve the time and enjoyment masters, so it's worth a thought or two. So like Goldilocks, we have three options we can start with. But what about colour? Colour, my mortal enemy. It's something I continually struggle with. If you struggle with it too, then you can do one simple thing: don't use it. There's nothing wrong with black and white comics. Most manga is black and white, and one of the most successful comics of the past 20 years was in black and white, so there's no pressure to use colour. I've used it in most of my comics because apparently I want to punish myself, but also because I want to get better at using it. If I could get to 1/10 of Christian Ward's ability, then I'm a happy camper. If you decided on a cartoony style, then you may need to rely on colour more than a realistic style. So if you're not that comfortable with colour and you know you want to draw like a cartoonist, then you may have to face your fear and get used to using colour. But before I get into the options we have when it comes to colour, I want to talk about my Patreon page. I offer these videos a week early to patrons, so you could have watched this one last week. I also show artwork that I don't tend to show anywhere else, provide updates there first, and upload my mini comics there before I put it up on Webtoons and Tapas. I'll also be showing an in-depth look into how I'm creating my current comic project. But it's not just about my stuff, because you can affect which videos I create for this channel. If you have a particular question and want me to look into it, then I'll do just that and make a video with answers. The link is in the description, so have a butcher's. Anyway, back to colour. If you did want to use colour, then don't worry. I'm not going to leave this video at don't use colour and then move on. You do have some options. The first is to use a limited colour palette. If you're new to this medium, I'd strongly recommend this. You don't want to overwhelm yourself, so keep things simple. You could use a muted palette and assign warm colours to lights and cool colours to shadows, or vice versa. Whichever colour scheme you decide on, stick with it throughout your comic. You're going to want to keep things consistent. Why? Well, for one, you want consistency so you don't confuse your audience, but the other reason is the secret weapon. You can whip this out during the climax of your comic, which sounded dirtier than I meant it. What is the secret weapon? Contrast. Let's say you decided on a muted colour palette throughout your whole book, but then we get to the big action set piece or the plot twist or something else that's dramatic. To help punctuate the drama, we can flip our colour palette on its head. The normal muted colours now become vibrant. An obvious example is if the climax of your comic is violent, you can add large amounts of saturation to the blood. You could also use red to show alarm and change everything to red, like in the film Suspiria or like in Southern Bastards. The main takeaway from this video is that you don't need to add pressure to yourself in terms of how well you can draw. Comic artists aren't good because of their ability to render or paint like Sargent or Leyendecker. They're good because they know how to tell stories through visuals. Your ability to sell emotion or to translate an action is more important than how well you can draw an armpit or something. Also, limitations are good. If you feel your knowledge or skills are limited, then you can use that to your advantage. Invention is the mother of necessity, and so you could create an art style that is totally unique because of your knowledge gaps. And that's pretty cool. I hope this has given you some food for thought about how you're going to approach your next comic project. Focus on the story, the emotion, and your own voice, and give yourself a break. Getting good takes years of dedicated practice, and you'll get there. In the meantime, create comics, because comics are fun and you don't need permission to start. While we're here, post your links to your comics in the comments so we can check out other stuff. That was difficult to say. I've been Brinkley, have fun drawing, and I'll see you next week where we're going to talk about AI. Are artists being replaced by computers? Well, no. Shit, you have no reason to watch now. Okay. Artists are being replaced by computers, and art is going to die, and we're all going to burn. There, that's better.